You are an educator extraordinaire and have on several occasions been part of the Wild World of Robert H. Jackson Center, and we're celebrating our 20th anniversary, hard to believe. And so, just out of curiosity, in your background, I mean, first of all, where are you from? Where's Tom Schmidt from?
I grew up in West Seneca, New York, a little village called Gardenville. That's where Mom and Dad grew up, and that's where our first home was. So went to school in South Buffalo at Bishop Timon High School, and that's where a lot of my roots got laid.
And how did you, kind of give me the rest of your little autobiography here.
Well, wound up getting a job. I went to college in Fredonia because I was going for education. Thought about teaching high school English, and then got involved with elementary kids and really enjoyed the little kids. So I got my first job in Randolph, New York. That's how I wound up in this area, going to Randolph Central Schools, teaching first grade. I think back then all you had to do was be a guy and say you wanted to teach first grade. You didn't have much of an interview process you had to go through. Yeah. They were pretty excited for that. So had a good time with that, first and second grade for about 13 years. And so that's where, that's how it all got started in education for me.
And you came to Jamestown here?
No, there's some stops in between. Bemis Point as a principal, Chautauqua County Teacher Center as a program coordinator. Then Jamestown, first job in Jamestown was an assistant principal at Jefferson Middle School. Followed that up with probably one of the highlights of my career was 13 and a half years at Bush Elementary School as the principal. From there to Pew for a year as an assistant superintendent, and then finished my official career as the superintendent in Sherman, New York. And so.
And during that time, and this is my recollection, but I saw Tom Schmidt, aside from just being in the community, but really as part of, you got involved with the education committee at the Jackson Center.
Yeah, and to this day, I'm really not sure how that happened, or how, you know, I found an interest in it, and I was talking to someone, and I wish I could remember who invited me. I went to a meeting, and I guess it's kind of history from there, but that goes back quite a long time with the center. That was early on with the education committee. But from there, that's where my interest came in with Jackson.
So with that in education, as I recall, we sort of started that Young Readers program at the time, and the education committee was important to come up with names and ideas and books and essentially say, Greg, here, you figure out how to get that person. But do you remember that time period?
Yeah, I do. We would sit at those meetings and try and figure out who is this next person going to be. And this gentleman by the name of Greg Peterson would walk in and say, I got an idea. And from a lot of times it would fly from there. Sometimes it would be a member of a committee who would have a name and a book that they've used in their classroom, and it went, you know, that also worked. And so it was always interesting to see who it would be, and then it was always a challenge, can we get them here? And you did a pretty good job of making that sale. You could probably sell anything, Greg. I think that's not a problem.
Well, fast forwarding perhaps a little bit, but I remember one of the more important sales jobs that Randy Sweeney and I did one time, inviting you, Tom Schmidt, to a breakfast, and I'm not sure you knew what was going to. I'm not sure everybody gave you a heads up as to what we were going to ask, but ask we did.
Yes, you did. Breakfast was good.
It was on 2nd Street. I think it was called a Babalu at the time.
Yeah, I think so. We were down there, and it was interesting. And you proposed that you needed an interim coming up for the center. And at the time, I had trying to think if I had just finished or had not been to Casadega yet to be the interim superintendent. I can't remember the order, but I don't think I had been there yet. But I said, sure, let's do this. It was interesting. I mean, because it's the first time for me being outside of public education. And it was was a different thing for me. I had to learn an awful lot just about how things worked and how the Jackson Center worked, and to try and see where we were going.
What was the surprise?
What was the surprise?
Surprise. I mean, you are going from public to private. You're going from a taxpayer-based organization, which is schools, to we had to be funded.
Well, there's a piece of it. I always knew how funding happened for my job, and when you're doing education, you had a budget. You knew it was concrete for pretty much. You knew to the penny how much you had to deal with. You knew you were paying X number of employees and funding the education for X number of students, and how do you do the driveways and all. You knew everything. This was a crapshoot in a way, to put it mildly, trying to figure out how much money you had to have, and then and do you really have it? Because you don't know what's coming in the next year. You don't know what's going to happen. And then trying to work a budget around that. And, education, I know what the product is. It's pretty simple. In private industry, I guess maybe if you're manufacturing a product, you know what that is. That's pretty easy. But with the Jackson Center, your product is whatever you present, and then how you're going to get people to take that in. That was the hard part for me.
During that first year, how long was the first interim time period?
Probably about a year. Yeah, I think they were each about that time frame.
Do you remember any highlights of that? Any people you met? Anybody who we brought in that was sort of unique and interesting?
Yeah, but trying to separate the two of them was always interesting. When you bring in this, the head of the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice, it's like, whoa, he's here. But there were speakers. There was the people who were involved with the center long before me. The people who were involved with Jackson in Nuremberg. The people who were the normal speakers. People on the board who I had not met before. I was just in awe sometimes of some of the people who I would work with on a daily basis. Meeting the prosecutors at Chautauqua. And then, not really knowing much about that, having not paid any attention to that before I had been with the center, and then realizing that the career and the life these people had dedicated themselves to, that was just, I was kind of awestruck in a way, You have dealt with some of the worst people in the world. You have put them away. And here you all are just talking, we're sitting, we might be having a beer in the relaxing hours of it, and it was great.
David Crane was I think maybe even chairman when you were one of your interim periods.
David Crane, I think, was the chair of the board when I was on the first time. Yeah, good man. I think he's still on the board. Yeah, he was interesting, and then the more I got to talk to him, the more I learned about what he was like. And at times I'm thinking, boy, I wish I could take a class from David Crane at Syracuse. I wish I could take a class from John at, where was John? St. John's. And now it's, who's at, down in Washington, we have some professors on the board. And I'm thinking, how wonderful it would be to take a class from these people. What a gift that would be.
Well, you probably met Eli Rosenbaum, and now we have Chuck Gustafson, who's at Georgetown.
Eli I didn't know. No, but Chuck, yeah, I thought he's the one at Georgetown. That's what I was just thinking of, take a class from him when he was a professor.
Well, we've been blessed on many fronts, both from the staff perspective, board perspective. The people, once you ask them, this was a very easy sell. Very pretty man. I don't know if your life...
Yep, I met him. Had a chance to sit with him at one of the dinner tables one time. Had a chance to sit with him in the room and talk. Again, just fill my ears. Let me hear everything you have to say, because it's also interesting. And tell me about what you've done.
Was Whitney Harris?
Whitney Harris, I did not know.
But I know that we've had. You were always very good at not only introducing people and making sure everybody felt comfortable, but Also, you were a great selfie guy. You know, you want taking pictures of that. I mean, it was.
I don't remember that.
No, but it was. You're great. Good for the cause. During that time period, your first interim time period, who was the staffers?
Oh, the first time when I got there. Sonia was there. Marion was upstairs. Marion was there the whole time, for all my times. And then, let's see, when I first got there, oh gosh, I just drew a blank. She's over at the, shoot.
Was that the one that married Tim Schmidt?
No. She came after.
Okay.
She's over at across the street now, from the Jackson Center. Why am I drawing a blank? I can't believe it. I can see her. Her husband's a chef. Come on.
Oh, even now I'm drawing a blank. Yep.
Yeah.
She's
lovely.
She's not the community foundation.
Yeah, she's a wonderful woman. She
was terrific.
She was terrific. Man, when she left, I was Liz Jones. Thank you.
Sorry, Liz, for our.
Yeah, Liz. It's called age.
On 2 parts.
No, Liz was wonderful.
Yeah.
Liz, when she was just able to pull that thing all together, and she did a great job. And I think Liz hadn't been there too long when I came on the first time.
Yeah.
And because she had taken Carol's place.
Right.
But yeah, that was a good staff. Both of those desks have turned over now, and but I think the staff right now is phenomenal. I think the staff is great, what's going on there. They really got their act together. They worked together as a team. That was kind of fun always to be there when people work together.
So you were twice the interim executive director of the Robert H. Jackson Center, and you probably came in knowing not that much about Robert Jackson. We weren't looking. Randy and I, when we met with you, we were looking for a quality person, and you are. But not necessarily. You didn't need to be a scholar or have any background or even be an attorney.
Well, that I wasn't. Probably any of those, but the first time I came in was the executive director, and that was a learning time for me. Who is Jackson? And I'd read a few books, and you had the general idea, but when you see more about who he was and what he did, I think what impressed me the most right off the bat was seeing how he was still the Supreme Court justice today, that is respected, that is quoted, that is looked back on for the rule of law. And then the second time, I couldn't come as the executive director because of a by-rules thing, so I had to come as president, which was what's in a title. And so I did that. But again, still, Jackson's legacy is what I think is going to last forever. We've had a lot about the Supreme Court in the last few years. Rule of law, what's right, what's wrong. But if we go back to his writings, I think we'll always get the answers we need. The question is, will we always be able to go back to his writings and get the answers that we need? So we'll see.
Well, one of the things that is the center has worked very hard on many fronts, including most recently the social media aspect of it, is finding quotes of Jackson, those nuggets, which we always knew a few, but now there's such a big number you see on social media that Kristen and Nicole are putting out that seems so applicable today.
Yeah, every day. If I turn on Instagram, I turn on Facebook, the Jackson Center and Robert H. Jackson is in front of me. It happens. And if that can be spread, if we can get those words out even further somehow, websites are always questionable with us at the Jackson Center, trying to get the best one up and running, and sometimes you can't do it with a small staff, but they're doing all right. But they're doing the social media thing, and that's good because it's putting it out, and more than ever. I wish I would have been able to do more of that when I was there, but now it's happening, and that's a good thing.
It was youth's Youth shall be served.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mentioned the website. And the websites are great, but you need someone to do it. And it's, Jackson Center works on the dollars they have, and you have to prioritize, and that's always been the issue. You asked me about moving to private. Dollars were the issue. They told us some of the things we could do and some of the things we couldn't do.
Right. Oh, that will constantly be a challenge, but an opportunity. You see them, and you sort of chase that. You also were part of the construction. So during that time period, we were recipients of the DRI Grant from the
That's
city
right.
of Jamestown, $1.5 million, and the devil was definitely absolutely in the detail, and that's where you particularly got involved in all that.
Yeah, that was on my second stint.
Mm-hmm.
We were just looking to apply for that grant when I left the first time. Susan came in and did a great job of getting it through. And then when I came in, we were ready to start. Took a while still to start because there was, again, the devil was in the details, as you said, putting together the project and making sure it happened, then bidding it and finding out that everything we were told we could do for $1.5 million doesn't even come close to $1.5 million. That you needed about $2.5 million or more. So we had to whittle it down a little, but now if you walk into the center and you look at that new entranceway and the elevator's there, now we can get people to the second floor. Now we actually have the ability to really move and do some good things. The entranceway was important for not just weatherproofing what we had, but for getting a large number of people into the building easily and making sure it worked well.
Oh, it's a spectacular entrance right now.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, it's really nice. And the Jackson bus sitting right there with the light on it as you see it from the outside, or as you come in, that's the first thing you see. It's a great way to enter the building.
Speaking of the Jackson bust, we were inspired through the good work of Dexter Benedict.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I and Julia
Yep.
went to the Truman Library for a dedication of a bust of Jackson. And Don Wordman is how we met Don there.
That's right.
Do you remember that trip?
I remember that trip. The first thing I remember about that trip is our flight from here to Pittsburgh. It was when we got to Pittsburgh, the pilot turned around and looked at us and said, "That's the longest it's ever taken us." Because it took normally a 45-minute flight. Mm-hmm. I think it took us almost 2 hours.
Yeah.
I'm surprised we didn't run out of gas, but it took almost 2 hours into that wind, and we missed a flight. Our flight from Pittsburgh to, where were we going? To Kansas, to Missouri, Kansas City, right?
Right.
And we missed the flight, so they put us on a flight to Dallas, then a Dallas to Kansas City.
Yep.
And we got there in time for dessert at dinner, if I remember correctly. And that was when we met everybody at dinner that night. But it was a really nice ceremony the next day. It was very impressive to be there at the museum. I had never been there before, and to see everything and actually get a little tour of it. And then we spent time doing some research.
Yeah.
We were looking for things that had to do with Jackson and Truman, and I thought it was pretty cool.
Great experience, and Postscript time that I'm not sure if I told you, but you may recall us looking at the exhibit and seeing a video of Harry Truman talking about Jackson.
Yes.
Of course I get it.
Fireside chat type thing.
Yeah, I get all juiced up.
Yeah.
We've never seen that, and we would like that.
I remember that.
And the guy who was the curator said, "We'll make it happen." Well, it then learned that it was owned, or the copyright was owned by Sony.
Oh, okay.
Which then launched me down a whole 3.5 year rat hole dealing with how to get their approval, because the Truman Library couldn't give it to us because somebody else had the copyright.
Okay.
Until Don Wordman got on the board. And Don, of course, had a connection with the folks at Truman Library, Kurt Graham and stuff. And he called and says, come on. And next thing you know, boom. And we got the permission immediately. We now have it.
Oh, good.
So the whole interview, not just the piece of Truman talking about Nuremberg and Jackson. So anyways, for the camera, that's the quick story of Tom Schmidt and Kurt Graham and Don Wertman. Yeah, so that was a fun day.
Yeah, and from there we got Don onto the board.
Got Don on the board. That's
Right.
And you were on the board. You got on the board, became chairman of the board.
I did. Yeah.
How did that happen? I mean,
There's a good question. I don't know how that happened. I think I got on the board because when I got off the first time, then they asked me if I would be on the board. Then I was on the board when we needed someone as an interim again, and there was no one to do the interim again, so that's how I wound up getting back into the interim thing and staying on the board. That had to do with why it had to be a president, not something else. It was a fun time. I enjoyed my time on the board. Yeah. It's an interesting board because everybody is all over the place. You know, if you sit on the United Way board here, everybody's from here. And when you have a meeting, you know everybody and you see everybody. But on this board, there's still people I've never met from the years on the board who I don't know, I've never met them, probably never will. Yeah. Because they would either phone into a meeting from Europe or somewhere else in the States, and it was good. Which is what made it hard on that board because the working group was small, and the board needs. There were sometimes you just need boots on the ground, and it was tough to do that. But the board was dedicated, and I'll give them that. Even though many of them couldn't be here, they were dedicated to the center and to Robert H. Jackson's legacy and to the work that we were trying to do. And but I think one of my best accomplishments being on the board was when is hiring our current president. Mm-hmm. We went through the interviews and the cream rose to the top, and I was very pleased that she's there now.
What was it during the interview process that maybe caught your eye? Because we're talking about Kristen McMahon on the film. A characteristic or something that said, I think you're the person.
Integrity. I think I saw her integrity. I saw her willingness to work. Having sat in that office, I knew you had to be able to get along with the people who work there. I was looking for that. Someone who could work with the other. There's only 3 other individuals at the time, but you had to work with the 3 individuals who were there and pull them together, and she's been able to do that. And so that's what I was looking for. She also had the interest. She was living in Washington at the time, Bonaventure graduate, sat on the board at Bonaventure. So, that wasn't a bad connection to still maintain for us as we always look at where those things are going with the center. So she just had all the qualities that I think a number of us were looking for, and she was pretty much a unanimous choice at the time.
So Kristen's on board, and if you had to give some guidance to Kristen and sort of crystal ball the Jackson Center 5 years, because you've been in several spots of the center. You're unique in that way. You've got the education component, you've been an interim director, you've been on the board, you've been chairman of the board. Nobody's got the titles that you have. Your obituary would be very long just on the Jackson Center.
Let's not rush things here.
So if you had to crystal ball and say, Kristen, here are some perhaps maybe priorities or guidance, because she's been at this now a year, certainly done a lot of initiatives, but always looking for that gray hair advice. Mm-hmm. Both of you and I qualify.
Yeah, what would I tell her? I'd say, just always remember what Jackson's ideals were. What programming fits that? Not just for what programming puts Jackson's legacy out there, because that's important to keep it out there. But what programming can we do for the general public, for students, for college-age students, high school students? What programming can we do that makes them think, so that things that Jackson did, things that Jackson said, those words can be used to make other people think about it and, you know, act civil in today's society? That'd be one thing. Two, look at the people who are there. I mean, you're a wealth of knowledge. John is a wealth of knowledge. So many more. These people know Jackson, they have connections. Use them, you know. Take advantage of it while you can, of the people who are able to give you information. And two, just relax. Don't sweat the small stuff. Just let it go and enjoy the place. That's what I would say.
So Tom, having been there in many capacities, as I mentioned, was there an event or two that's something you'd say, Greg, you probably don't even know about what happened here, or something incredibly unique, different, that you'd say, this is a Tom Schmidt moment?
I'm not sure what you don't know about that happened there. I'm not sure if there is anything like that. We had a program that changed me, that we had. It was the court case that involved a Jamestown man and his partner from Kentucky.
Paul Campion?
Yeah, Paul. And I just forgot his partner's name, but the program that we put on for that, you know, was a packed house that night. Mm-hmm. But as I sat there and I listened, it changed me a little bit that I was able to hear that. Mm-hmm. It made a difference. I always wanted to see more programming like that. If I would have been there, I think I would have always thought about that time of year, right about when the court cases are coming out, when the judges and when the Supreme Court is putting everything out like they do at that, what is it, May, April, somewhere in there it happens, June, somewhere in there. That we should always have a program and bring in the people who are important to that case. Bring in the attorney who just argued it. Bring in the people who are personally involved and let them talk about it. To me, that would be important. That would be a great annual program. But that night was important for me for a lot of reasons. Because I don't know where this is going, but right after that, my son told me he was gay. Mm-hmm. And I had a whole new understanding of people because of that night. That helped me a lot. So that was good. Just little moments that when I had maybe with conversations with people who knew Jackson or who were from history now, conversations with them about just everyday life. Yeah. That was important because you got to see they were real people. Right. So those are the things on the center. You know, and getting some new people on the board was important for me. Leah coming on as now board chair. To me, that was phenomenal. When I had to leave, and I asked her if she would take a look at that. I felt bad because there was an assistant chair who's a wonderful woman, and I didn't want to just go past her, but I wanted to see that youth. I wanted to see some young blood and some exuberance coming in, and she provided that, and so I was happy about that.
When I asked you to come in today, and you were thinking about coming in today, what was the question you expect I was going to ask you that I haven't?
You know, that's the exact question I use at the end of every interview when I hire a teacher or a principal over my career. And it's always funny, the questions they would ask me, then I would help them to answer it, and they go, oh. So it's an interesting question. I figured you'd ask me about nothing that you haven't. I figured you'd ask me about my time at the center, why I got maybe involved with the center. I don't know. I guess that's about it.
Well, don't close up your book yet, because no telling you'll be back at the center.
Maybe someday. I wouldn't mind being on the board again someday. That would be fine. They're good people, and it's a good. I hope the center maintains itself. You know, it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. Will there be a connection with a university down the road? When will the next building project be, so John can see the archives like they're supposed to be at the center instead of all over the place? And you know, will we have the money to hire a historian again, or an archivist, or who knows what? So
this has been great. Thank you, Tom.
My pleasure. Thank you.